Have you ever had that moment where someone asks you for something and you feel your stomach twist just a little? Maybe it's your grown child calling again, asking for help with money, or a friend hinting, not so subtly, that you should babysit her grandkids. And even though your heart is generous, a small voice inside you whispers, "Why does this always fall on me?" You've lived a life full of love, sacrifice, and hard-earned lessons. You've shown up for others time and time again, through thick and thin, late nights and early mornings, birthdays and funerals, and everything in between. But now you're in a different chapter, a chapter where peace matters more than pressure, and where your time, your energy, and your emotional well-being are not up for grabs. And yet, even now, some people just don't get it. They still treat you like the go-to fix-it person, the emotional crutch, the safety net, as if your role is to make their life easier, even if it comes at the cost of your own. But let's be honest, just because you can help doesn't mean you should. So, today, let's talk, really talk, about 5 things that no one, not your children, your friends, your siblings, or anyone, should ever ask you to do at this point in your life. Not because you're unwilling, but because you finally understand. Your peace is priceless, and no one has the right to take it from you. Let me ask you something. Has anyone ever made their problem feel like it's yours? Maybe it starts small. "Can you help just this once?" they say. And of course, being the person you are, you say yes. You want to be there. You've always been there. But before you know it, that one-time favor becomes a permanent role. You're holding up someone else's life like a support beam, and it's starting to feel heavy. Here's the truth. You are not responsible for fixing what others have broken. Not their finances, not their relationships, not their mess. And when people ask you to step in over and over, they're not just asking for help. They're asking you to carry something that was never yours to begin with. That kind of burden weighs on your heart. It steals your energy. And if you're not careful, it becomes so familiar that you forget it was never meant to be yours. You find yourself solving their emergencies, bailing them out, watching your peace unravel bit by bit. Until one day you look around and wonder, when did my life stop being mine? The answer is, the moment you stopped saying no. But here's something powerful. Saying no isn't cold. It's not selfish. It's self-respect. And self-respect is what creates boundaries. The kind that protect your joy, your health, your time, and your freedom. You've given so much. You've raised children, worked jobs, survived losses, and made it through life's toughest seasons. You don't owe anyone the rest of your energy just because they didn't learn to manage their own. And let's talk about one of the biggest traps of all, lending money. If your phone rings and it's someone who hasn't called in months, but the first thing out of their mouth is, "Can I borrow?" You already know where this is going. It always starts out small. "Just for a few weeks," they say. "I promise I'll pay you back." And maybe you want to believe them. Maybe you've believed them before. But how many times have those loans turned into silence, resentment, or worse, broken trust? At this stage in life, you shouldn't have to chase people down for what's owed to you. You shouldn't have to lie awake at night wondering if your savings will cover your own needs, because someone else couldn't manage theirs. You've worked hard for your money. Every dollar in your account is proof of your effort, your discipline, your sacrifice. It's not a donation fund for people who only call when they want something. Now listen, this doesn't mean you don't care. Of course you care. Of course you'd help if it were a real emergency. But let's be honest, many of these requests aren't emergencies. They're habits. They're patterns. And too often, they're built on guilt. The, "but you're my mom," or "your family" kind of guilt. the kind that makes you feel bad for protecting what's yours. But here's the hard truth. When someone uses guilt to get what they want, that's not love. Oh, that's manipulation. And if you give in to that, you're not just losing money, you're losing your peace of mind. You're saying yes to their comfort and no to your own. You've earned the right to wake up in the morning and not worry about who's going to call asking for something. You've earned the right to sip your coffee in peace, to enjoy the view out your window without a storm coming in through the phone. And if someone really loves you, they won't put you in a position where you have to choose between your financial stability and their convenience. So the next time someone asks you for money, not because they need help surviving, but because they're avoiding responsibility, take a deep breath and say no, kindly, firmly, and without guilt, because your future is worth protecting. And your peace? That's priceless. Now let's shift a little. There's another kind of request that can be just as harmful. It doesn't come through a phone call. It's quieter than that. Sometimes it slips into a conversation. Other times it's just a look, a comment, a sigh. It sounds like, "Why do you still dress like that?" Or, "You're too old to be listening to that kind of music." Or maybe even, "That's not how we do things anymore." And suddenly, you're being asked to change who you are, your style, your music, your routine, your words, your beliefs, everything that makes you you. People don't always realize what they're doing when they say those things. But what they're really saying is, you're not allowed to enjoy what you enjoy anymore. As if turning 60 or 70 or 80 somehow means giving up the things that bring you joy. But here's what they forget. Those things, they're not just habits. They're parts of your story. That old sweater you love, it's been through more with you than some people. That music you still hum along to, it carried you through heartbreaks and celebrations. That way you speak, that way you think, that quiet strength you carry, that's all you. And it deserves to be honored, not erased. You are not here to conform. You are not a relic. You are not outdated. You are the living proof that a life well lived leaves its mark in beautiful ways, scars, smile lines, songs, and stories. So when someone asks you to change, not because it helps you, but because it makes them more comfortable, remember this: your life is not a performance for others. You don't have to update yourself like software to keep up with people who've forgotten where they came from. You've earned the right to be exactly who you are. Unapologetically, joyfully, fully. And if someone has a problem with that, well, maybe the problem isn't you. There's so much freedom in remembering that you are not here to shrink so others can stretch. You are not here to hide your light so others don't feel uncomfortable. You are here to live, to fully, peacefully, proudly live. So the next time someone suggests you tone it down or move with the times, you look at them with love and say, "I've earned every bit of who I am, and I'm not changing for anyone." Sometimes the biggest burden doesn't come from a favor or a financial request. It comes from the quiet expectation that you will put someone else's feelings above your own. You might recognize it when a family member says, "Can you just do this for me?" It would mean so much. Or when a friend tells you, "I just need you to go along with it. It'll make things easier for everyone." And in those moments, you're faced with a choice that shouldn't even be on the table. Sacrifice your peace for their comfort, or say no and risk being misunderstood, judged, or even blamed. But let me ask you something straight from the heart. When did your needs stop mattering? When did your peace, your preferences, your happiness become something people felt they could step over if it made their day a little easier? It's a subtle kind of pressure. It doesn't shout, but it speaks loud enough to make you second-guess yourself. It can sound like, "Don't make a scene," Or, it's just easier if you go along with it. And suddenly, you're not living for yourself. You're managing everyone else's emotions, walking on eggshells so no one else has to feel uncomfortable. But the cost? It's heavy. Because every time you say yes to protect someone else's feelings, you risk saying no to your own truth. Every time you pretend something doesn't bother you, just to avoid conflict, you chip away at your own joy. And let's be real, you've had a lifetime of putting others first. You've stayed silent when it was easier. You've smoothed things over for the sake of peace. But at this stage, your peace shouldn't come with a price tag. Your comfort, your truth, your well-being, these are not negotiable anymore. This isn't about being difficult. It's about being real. You've earned the right to speak your mind, to stand firm when something doesn't sit right with you, to say, "That doesn't work for me," and not feel like you're doing something wrong. And if someone asks you to set your feelings aside so they can feel better, that's not love. That's control. Because love doesn't ask you to disappear. It doesn't ask you to quiet your voice or bury your emotions so others don't have to deal with their own. Think about it. If your grown child says, "Mom, don't say anything at the party, okay?" It'll make people uncomfortable. What they're really saying is, your voice isn't welcome. And maybe they don't mean to hurt you, but it hurts all the same. Because you weren't trying to start trouble. You were just being you. Or maybe a sibling says, "Don't bring that up, it'll make things awkward." And you're left holding the weight of unspoken pain, pretending that your feelings don't exist. That's not fair. And it's not healthy. You deserve to be seen, heard, and valued. Not just as someone's parent or sibling, but as a whole person with thoughts, feelings, and boundaries. And here's something no one says enough. You don't have to carry guilt for choosing yourself. Not now. Not anymore. It's okay to say no. It's okay to say, "I'm not comfortable with that." It's okay to prioritize your emotional health. Because if you don't, who will? Now let's talk about another situation that's all too common, but rarely spoken about. It's when someone expects you to step into their conflict. Maybe it's a family argument. Maybe your kids aren't speaking to each other, and now they're looking at you expecting you to fix it. Or maybe there's tension between your siblings and they say, "You have to talk to them. You're the only one who can." Suddenly, you're being pulled into a mess you didn't create. One child wants you to take their side. The other says you're playing favorites. You find yourself in the middle of a battle that's been brewing for years, and now you're supposed to be the referee. But here's the thing. You are not the repairman of broken relationships you didn't break. You can't patch up wounds you didn't cause. You can't force peace where people aren't ready to make it themselves. And yet, the pressure is real. It tugs at your heart because you love them, because you want harmony. But that love doesn't mean you have to lose yourself trying to create a peace that no one else is willing to work for. In fact, stepping into other people's fights can be the quickest way to lose your own peace. You end up absorbing everyone's tension. You become the emotional dumping ground. You try to keep everyone happy, and no one ends up happy, least of all you. So let me say this clearly. You do not owe anyone your involvement in drama, conflict, or emotional tug-of-wars. If someone truly values you, they will never ask you to pick sides in a war you didn't start. And it gets even harder when it comes to inheritance, money, or family property. You see your children arguing, not over memories, but over possessions. That house you built with love becomes the center of a fight. And your heart breaks, not just for the things they say, but for what it means. You try to mediate. You try to help. But no matter what you do, someone feels wronged. Someone blames you. Someone says you should have done more. But let me tell you the truth. You don't have to fix the unfixable. You didn't raise your children to fight over things. And you certainly didn't work your whole life to see your legacy become a battleground. So when the drama starts, you are allowed, no, you are encouraged to step back, to protect your heart, to say, I love you all, but I won't be pulled into this. And if they guilt you, if they say you're abandoning them, you can look them in the eye and say, I've done my part. I'm choosing peace now. Because choosing peace isn't betrayal, it's wisdom. And speaking of wisdom, let's talk about what it really means to live for yourself. For so long, maybe you've been told that your worth is tied to how much you give, that your value is in how much you do for others. But there comes a point where giving too much starts to take everything. And the hardest truth of all is this: some people don't actually want your advice, your support, or your help. They want your energy. And once it's gone, they move on, leaving you depleted, confused, and forgotten. That's why boundaries matter more now than ever. Not because you're becoming cold, but because you've learned that without boundaries, people will take and take until there's nothing left of you. So if anyone asks you to give more than you have, if they demand your time, your energy, your emotional space without giving anything in return, pause, breathe, and ask yourself, does this bring me peace or does it steal it? Because if it steals your peace, it's not worth the price. And here's a gentle reminder you might need to hear today. You do not have to explain your no. You don't have to justify your choices. You don't have to beg for understanding. You are allowed to protect yourself. You are allowed to step back. You are allowed to rest. Your heart is not a resource to be mined. It's a treasure to be cherished. And the more you value it, the more others will learn to value it too. There's one more request that can be even more damaging than the rest, and it's the one that's hardest to recognize at first. It doesn't come with loud words or dramatic moments. It comes in subtle conversations, suggestions wrapped in smiles, or quiet comments meant to nudge you in a direction you never asked to go. It's when someone asks you, without really saying it out loud, to stop being you, to shrink a little, to dial back the things that make you feel alive, to let go of the routines that give you peace, to stop dreaming, stop doing, stop living in the way that lights you up. They say things like, "Why do you still bother dressing up?" Or, "You're too old to be taking on new things." They ask, "Isn't it time you slowed down?" But what they're really saying, whether they know it or not, is stop being vibrant. Stop being excited about life. Just sit back quietly and fade out. But let me tell you something that might just set your soul free. You don't owe anyone your silence, your stillness, or your surrender. Not now. Not ever. You're not too old to dress up. You're not too old to start something new. You're not too old to dance in your kitchen, to laugh at silly movies, to travel, to fall in love again, to plant a garden, to write that book, or to do whatever makes you feel like the best version of yourself. You're not here to fit into anyone else's box. You've earned the right to live fully. Loudly, if you want. Quietly, if you prefer. Colorfully, unapologetically, exactly as you are. You don't need to change your music, your habits, or your voice just to please someone who can't see your worth. And if someone asks you to dim your light so they feel more comfortable, that's not your problem. That's theirs. Your joy doesn't need to be justified. Your laughter doesn't need permission. Your choices don't require approval. You have the wisdom of experience now, and it's time to use it not just to guide others, but to protect your own spirit. Because let's be honest, how many years did you spend living for everyone else? Raising kids, managing a household, showing up for a job, caring for loved ones, sacrificing your own needs so others could grow? Those years taught you a lot. They taught you patience. strength, endurance, compassion. But they also taught you this: you can't pour from an empty cup. And now, in this chapter of life, your cup deserves to be full, filled with peace, with love, with freedom, with laughter, with the things you choose, not the things other people expect of you. So if someone, anyone, tries to tell you how to live, whether it's your child, a friend, or even society itself, you have every right to look at them kindly and say, "Thank you, but I'm doing just fine being myself." And really mean it. Because now, more than ever, it's time to live in alignment with what feels right for you. Not out of obligation, not out of guilt, not out of habit, but because your life, your one beautiful, extraordinary life, belongs to you. You've spent so much of it supporting others, building bridges, calming storms, holding hands through hard moments, and all of that was good. It was meaningful. But now, it's time to hold your own hand, to walk your own path, to stop surviving and start truly living. Let go of the emotional debts that were never yours. Let go of the guilt that crept in over the years. Let go of the need to please everyone. And start asking yourself the one question that matters most. Does this bring me peace? Because peace is your compass now. Not pressure, not expectation, not fear of what people will say. Peace. That soft, quiet feeling that tells you you're right where you need to be. And here's what I want you to remember. Every time you're tempted to say yes when you want to say no, you are not here to be everyone else's lifeline. You are not a backup plan, not a second chance, not a last resort. You are a full, beautiful person who deserves time, space, and respect. So if someone only calls you when they need something, if someone only loves you when you're giving, if someone only visits when they want a favor, ask yourself this: am I being valued? Or am I just being used? And don't be afraid of the answer. Because truth, even when it stings, is the beginning of freedom. You're not cold for drawing boundaries. You're not selfish for prioritizing your well-being. You're wise. You're seasoned. You've lived long enough to know the difference between love and obligation, between loyalty and manipulation. You've lived long enough to know that you matter, not because of what you do for others, but because of who you are. So from this day forward, make yourself a promise. A quiet, steady promise. I will protect my peace. I will honor my boundaries. I will say no when I need to. I will choose myself, not because I don't care, but because I finally do. Because the truth is, no one else can protect your heart the way you can. No one else can defend your joy. No one else can decide what your life will look like. Only you. And if someone doesn't understand, that's okay. Let them misunderstand you. Let them judge. Let them call you stubborn or distant or changed, because you have changed. You've grown. You've learned. You've let go of things that once weighed you down. And now you're stepping into a chapter that looks different, because it is different. It's yours. So if you've ever felt guilty for saying no, if you've ever worried about disappointing someone, if you've ever been afraid to stand your ground, let this be your reminder. You don't need anyone's permission to live the way that brings you peace. You've earned that peace. You've fought for it. And now you get to enjoy it. One moment at a time. One boundary at a time. One empowered decision at a time. Because no one, no matter how close they are, should ever ask you to give up your joy, your freedom, your identity, or your well-being. Not anymore. And if this message speaks to you, if something inside you is saying, yes, this is what I needed to hear, then I hope you'll take a moment to share your thoughts, your story, your truth, because you're not alone in this. So many people feel the same way you do. They just needed someone to say it out loud. So go ahead. Leave a comment below and share your experience. I'd love to hear what resonated most with you today. And if this video gave you strength, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel Strong Elderly Life, where we talk about the things that truly matter in this chapter of life. Here's to living boldly, with purpose, with boundaries, with joy. Here's to peace of mind and the power to protect it. And most of all, here's to you, because no matter what anyone else says, you matter. You always have. You always will. Thank you for watching, and until next time, take care of yourself the way you've always taken care of everyone else. You've earned it.